reading. You'll be hearing the work of our three wonderful juniors tonight. And I love that this reading happens in the library. I think we should have one reading a year surrounded by books in this beautiful setting. So you'll be hearing work by Ryan French, Nikolai Smith, and Bailey Gunoshek tonight. And our first reader will be Ryan, who is from Boulder, Colorado, and has been here for 2 years. And in that time, he's grown exponentially in all of the areas he's studied, in fiction, poetry, and dramatic writing. He'll be reading fiction and poetry tonight. And he's demonstrated great tenacity when it comes to revising and sticking with his writing projects and seeing them through. And he was also recognized as a semi-finalist in the Faulkner Wisdom short story competition. And our next reader will be Nikolai Smith, who is a 3-year junior and lives in Idyllwild and is a natural storyteller. This kid can sit and pump out a 10-page story in one sitting and can sit there and just work for hours on a story without stopping. And he's written a wide variety of stories in his time here, exploring an inventive range of characters, which you will notice tonight. He's also grown quite a bit as a poet as well, though you'll just be hearing a story tonight. And his fiction has been recognized as a semi-finalist in the Faulkner Wisdom short story competition also. And then our final reader will be Bailey Gunoshek, who is a 2-year junior, also from Idyllwild, also a particularly talented fiction writer, so you'll be hearing fiction tonight. And she won a gold medal in the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, which is a pretty big deal. She got to go to Carnegie Hall last year and accept that award. And then she's also received an honorable mention from Scholastic and has been recognized in the Faulkner Wisdom short story competition as well. I think you'll notice tonight she writes memorable, quirky, moving stories, and all 3 of these are a delight to listen to. So please enjoy, and we'll get started with Ryan French.
Hi, I'm Ryan French and I'm short. Can you hear me first of all?
Yeah.
Cool. Hi, I'm Ryan French, I'm a 2-year junior, and I will be reading 2 poetry first and a fiction piece, only part of it because it's long. So for background, my first poem is called Ode to Oppenheimer. I wrote this piece in Divinatory a while ago where we did palm readings. At the time, I was thinking about my mother, how she held my hands, and was like looking at my palms constantly. And then I started thinking about how my parents met, and they met making nuclear bombs, to say the least. Yeah! And so I was thinking about that, and who created the atom bomb? Oppenheimer, if you didn't know. So this is kind of like me thanking him for my parents meeting and giving me life. So here we go. An ode to Oppenheimer. I owe my life to Oppenheimer, dulled to deep lines created unintentionally by the will to live and detonate others to pieces. Veins snake around my lifeline, cut deep and long because that's the way I was engineered. Existence created to breathe into others' exhaled lungs. Radiation poisoning poised to intoxicate others. I was one of the few created to survive the next bomb. My hands interlaced with my mother's and father's. Sunspots and skin created from the explosions that went off. Cows from creating bombs and cows from creating me. Gentle nails pressed lightly into metacarpal bones. It's interesting, she says. Traces my lines over and over again. I was designed by Velcro and taped to survive. The next boiling cloud that will encase us, I will survive. My lines, palms, flesh, muscles, cells were granted by Oppenheimer. I will live through the bombs some will not see. Those who were not created by Oppenheimer, who are not durable enough for radioactive snow to sleep down. I will live through this because of Oppenheimer. My second piece has a lot of parts, so stick with me here. Open bodies for fruitless endings. Part 1, fateless body. Our hands wrench around your splitting throat, and we tie back your hair into a tight little bun. My fingers hold your cords tight, pushed away from the urge to explore what makes you up. Your pipes squeeze and unsqueeze, lost feeling in my fingers holding too tight, and my own bones jut out in an odd fashion of ways. You are not so faithless to be designed this poorly. Part 2, Soft Cat. You wheeze out that you want to hold your cat. I tell you in my own vanity that she's right by your feet. She purrs up against your leg, but I think you've lost feeling as well. You glance in the bathroom mirror at yourself, pull an awkward smile, strain your eyes up to mine. I clench my hands harder around you. You let air escape your lungs, begrudgingly forced as windpipes close again, and you become a slacked body in my hands. I rest my head against your shoulder. Part 3, Fell Out. I let go of strands and your hands drop. The split does not heal, you are not magic. It grows larger as I don't hold you together. The split cascades down your chest and you split like a pomegranate. You pop open more when you try to see yourself. Ribs begin to slip outside of you. I plunge my hands in to keep them back. You were not meant to split like me. Part 4, Plunged. You pull me into your abdomen. My whole body entangles inside yours. I melt and become hot amber. You scream and I burn veins that come too close to my gelatinous form. It eats and engulfs your lungs. I burn the inside of me and melt what was a part of you. I retract from you to see eyes glazed. I plunge myself back in, determined to become your new lungs. Part 5, Thrown in June. I remember loving you in June. Drove in the car to throw spoons at your mother. I held more spoons than I had ever held before. Spoons are not meant for throwing, they're meant for soup. You told me to aim at her face when we get there, but I ached instead. Never boil your teeth before you leave the house. I gnawed at the inside of my cheek. Even then, I wanted to eat you. Part 6, Borrowing Teeth. I fell into you. Our teeth banged against each other, and I craved to chew them. I popped out one of my teeth out and into my mouth, one of your teeth. It is bitter, I told you. You told me mine tasted like butter. Probar mantequilla de dientes, I said in broken Spanish, because I do not speak Spanish. We nodded and exchanged teeth and placed them in our open mouths. My gums dissolved them instantly. I was born with new teeth instead. Part 7, The Opening. I had split you open, had pressed my thumb over your throat, searching. Pressed too hard with sharp nails. It was only a cut in the beginning. Put my hands over it before you could see it or even feel it. Ripped you open more. You laughed and said it was fine. Opened yourself up more with your own hands. Did think about the pain before you did. Part 8, Voice Box. But I was the one to open you up all the way, selfishly to see your voice as raw as possible. But then you spilled out sounds of choking on yourself. I clamped my hands around you, stop it. Split more into my hands, drenched me with regrets. I didn't love you then or now. I loved you in June, and then no more. So this is my last piece. Thank you for coming again, and let's get started. Also, this one's called Sexy CBS, in case you want to. And also, it's just part of it. Just in case. I got turned into a vampire by my ex-girlfriend, Kathy. She bit my cheek when we were making out. It was the first time we actually had made out, so big bummer that it happened. It just kind of escalated into a serious make-out session. In our relationship of 7 months, we had only kissed twice. It was supposed to be a peck, I'm serious. But then it became more aggressive. And then she basically unhinged her jaw to bite me. Unhinged her jaw like a goddamn snake. And with the ever outside of my ever so squishy, innocent cheeks. So that was the first thing I learned about vampires. They know how to bite your neck for you to become one of them. That's a really interesting fact. She didn't mean to. It wasn't completely her fault either. I had known the risk of dating a vampire. It came with us avoiding skin-on-skin contact as much as possible to even dodge the temptation of doing so. Again, that didn't plan out so well, so bummer. Kathy is 15 years older than me. I was 19 when she was 34 when we first started dating, and that raised a few questions for most people when we told them. The first one being, why does she look so young? She looks like she's in her early 20s. And they were right, she did. And then we would play it off as a joke, saying, well, they caught us, we were just doing it for the laughs. People that knew Kathy just sneered at us, but didn't say anything outwardly. tell, though, because every time I was invited to hang out with her and her friends, it was awkward. Like, really awkward. So why am I thinking of Kathy now while I'm at work restocking ace bandages in the old people section? Because there's a blonde girl next to me that's looking at the knee braces and comparing the blue one and the black one, and honestly, I don't know the difference between them. Don't tell my boss. She's blonde, like Kathy. Not as attractive. All vampires are seriously attractive, but she's cute enough, I guess. She's not cute enough to be a vampire. Not that I'm being rude or anything, but there's a certain standard that vampires hold. Vampires hold the standard of beauty that average people strive for. She wasn't it. Or not there, at least. Maybe she got a nose job she would be. That's just me. She grabs the blue brace, walks over the counter, and waits for someone to arrive to check her out over the counter pharmacy hellhole, which no one is currently at. Sherry's never at the place she needs to be, so I always have to pick up her slacking at the register. She's either restocking Advil or sweeping up aisle 4. We're not sure why she only cleans that aisle. Even though we've told her repeatedly that we need her at the register. A cashier that doesn't exist and still holds a job is beyond me. I rush over there and tap on the register buttons, getting the scan gun out. I swipe in, check the pricing of it, and I think of the quick pick-up line I use sometimes. Hey, I start off. It's chill, it's casual, nothing out of the ordinary. You know, I think you qualify for a discount today. I tap a few buttons, removing $2 off her purchase. She looks at me sparingly. Yeah, the pretty lady discount. Heck of a bargain, $2 off, which is pretty good if you ask me. She stares at me with a vacant expression. For a second, I wonder if she heard me. Aren't you that dude that, like, never ages? Probably 35. That's gross. I'm 24, and I'd rather not be hit on by an old man. We look at each other in the eye for a moment. I tap the buttons again and add like $2 whole back. I watch her leave until she is halfway across the parking lot before I sulk back to the shelf I was stocking. 35 isn't that old. I murmured to myself. Okay, vampires aren't immortal. Let's get that straight. They die around the same age that average humans do. All that happens is aging is that they appear to age much slower. The outside appearance, at least. My guts are not 19 still. And I'm 34 years old now, thanks for asking. I look to be in my early to mid-20s. We all age well, and I would like to say vampires die beautifully. The true pain of being a vampire isn't being called a pedophile, being painfully beautiful, or even at times thirsting for blood. Thirsting for blood does have an easy solution most of the time. The solution being to suck that weird blood stuff out of the steaks before you cook them. And even if you do have to bite someone, there's always a 20% chance of them actually becoming vampires. So your stats are low and you're safe. Shut up. No one wants to bite you, by the way. No, the real problem is teeth becoming more sensitive. In our relationship, Kathy always complained that my teeth ached and that they were always sore. Only after that I got turned into a vampire did I understand. How can people stand to put that much sugar into one's mouth? It baffles me. I hope you all get cavities. The enamel in our teeth becomes weak. Simple as that. No one's sure why eating sweets becomes a no-no. The old habit of mine of having 3 sodas a week led to my first 2 cavities in the first month of being a vampire. After every meal with something crunchy, there's always a dull ache that rings out through my teeth and gums. Of course, it never goes away, but I can smile and bear it now. But even now, when I see people eating candy bars, I recoil at the feeling of putting that much sugar into one's mouth. Again, why? But anyways, being an employee of CVS isn't the most exciting thing I could be doing with my beautifully enhanced life. I could be working in short films as the dazzling hero or the alluring, misunderstood villain. I could be a sexy vampire doctor, saving the lives of other beautiful patients who all clamor to marry me, but I can't because it's against the contract I signed to be a sexy doctor. And then one day I treat the most beautiful one of them all, the most humble of them all, and we elope to some beautiful country in Europe and have beautiful half-human, half-vampire children. I can do anything else than being a sad CVS employee that can't get the number of half the girls I hit on. But Kathy said I was a sexy CVS employee, said it was hot, and I couldn't quit my job just yet because she liked a man in a loose blue polo shirt. So I did it! Not even when we broke up. I think I held on to the idea of still being a CVS boy just in case someone else fell in love with that idea too. They haven't. My watch beeps, alerting me that my shift is over. Technically, it's supposed to end at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, of course. I'm not a lunatic. But Tom is always late, starting his shift at 3:10, which means I start mine ends at 3:10, and I run down to the back room to grab my backpack and get the hell out of Dodge to catch a 3:15 teaching bus that's 3.5 blocks down. I can run there in about 3 to 4 minutes, and about 5 minutes, which are slightly faster than my normal pace. I don't like being late. I usually run because I hate the shopping district that my job is located in. It's filled with soccer moms, getting their nails done regular twice-a-week customers. Why do they do that? It bothers me as well. That know me when they come to get Advil due to their wine hangovers. I know them all too well. I only really avoid them because I know that some of Kathy's friends hang out with them because they're aging. I know it. And running into them sends me into a panic of seeing them size me up, wondering how I was ever good enough for Kathy, and I was, goddammit. I scrambled to run from eyes that could possibly know me, and hold my backpack up to shield the left half of my face so I'm less recognizable. I'm halfway across the parking lot when a car hits me. Well, it sounds like more dramatic than it was. Yes, I spilled over onto the car hood, but it wasn't a rushing thing where I broke the windshield or broke my arms. I sort of just roll onto the hood, slap the windshield, and then roll back on the ground when the person hits their brakes. I think them in my head that they're going at safe speed in the parking lot, but note that we should have put a children crossing sign up somewhere, or a Daniel crossing sign. The person gets out of their car, and I cover my eyes with my arm to shield myself from embarrassment that's about to come. The embarrassment of, I'm so sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going, and I'm sorry that I hate you, and other various lines around that formula. Daniel? The voice calls. I remove my arm inside. Looks in my head quickly who this person is. And no, I am not delighted to see them. No, Kathy. It's not Daniel. It's another sexy CBS boy. I say hoarsely from either being hit by the car or hearing Kathy's voice. Thank you.
Just about perfect. Thanks, Ryan. You saved me about like 2 minutes of fixing this thing. It never really does get old being up here. I like it. I like being in the library. But I spent my whole freshman year in here. But I'm going to read a nice, cute, I would like to say, little short story called The World's Strangest Stranger. Monday mornings are the sign of school, noticed by the glassy stare in every high school student's eyes when they realize that maybe they shouldn't have stayed up playing video games all night and instead should have finished that math homework. Luckily, some students didn't have to do much to prepare themselves for the upcoming day and would instead roll out of bed to half-ass their work and then later tell the teacher they were sorry and forgot about it. Always results in the teacher's disappointment because for them, any assignment that isn't perfectly according to the answer sheet is a failure, and any assignment that is perfectly according to the answer sheet is accused of cheating. May teachers never be happy with what we have to give them. Although Mondays aren't all that bad. I get to go to classes with my favorite teachers and listen to the ramblings of women and men in their late 30s talking about how badly we need grammar or how some dingus decided to start a war 100 some odd years ago. I don't have any problems with my classes, and my teachers and parents are okay with me being a solid B student, just trying his best. I get good progress reports saying I try to understand, and I watch students sprint down crowded hallways and to get lunch to eat something probably inedible while I go to the bookstore. Nothing to complain about here. Well, except for the fact that these mundane rinse and repeat days are the same story every week, and when my mom or brother or sister asks me how school was, my response is always, before I put my headphones over my head and listen away the rest of the day in music. They always try to strike up conversation, always saying, hey, Nashi, did you hear about this thing that happened on the news? Which I obviously didn't hear about because I was in class all day and spend my free time getting something to eat because I skipped breakfast and I'm always hungry. On that first day of a long, inevitable week, time pulls at its menacing minutes like some sort of game, attempting to see how long people under its spell can last until it drives them insane. And then, for the rest of the week, the days seem to be a lot more manageable. Students get back into their swing of things and make their ways to the classrooms with their crumpled up assignments and vague knowledge of information on tests. From there, the week would progress and eventually come to an end so that the cycle of education could begin anew. Friday afternoon, a swift November breeze caught leaves and the scent of pumpkin spice drinks from a nearby cafe. I chose to walk home that day after classes had ended early and I felt like bothering my mom at work with She had given me a duplicate key for our apartment in case I ever got home late after getting something to eat or if she locked herself out of the house. Those keys were always fastened to a keychain on the strap of my backpack, and I was sure to leave the house with them every morning, so I had them with me that day. It was when I entered the house that I felt uncomfortable, like how characters in horror movies always feel uneasy when the killer's in their house, but they don't know that, only the audience knows that. Though the easier option would to be ignore it, as opposed to looking around the house calling Mom until the supposed killer got me. Walking upstairs to my room and pushing the door open, I was not met with the emotionless face of Michael Myers, but instead a girl holding onto my pet rabbit and cooing at it, who looked up and smiled upon seeing my face. There was no time to react as she set down Scampers, my rabbit, and dashed towards me. Soon I felt my legs hit the floor, and there she was in front of me, her hands on either side of my waist against the carpet below us, while my hands were behind me to keep from falling back onto the floor. From her appearance, she was no older than me, around 16, despite the childish look in both her outfit and the gleam in her eyes. Those eyes were blood orange, red but orange but pink with white star to line them, and she stared at me with them, big and wide, as if trying to read my mind. Though if she did, all she would see would be multiple signs of confusion and concern as to why this girl had been sitting on my bed staring down at me practically nose to nose. Black hair that was scruffy at the top but pulled into two neat low pigtails hovered just inches away from her chest, but framed her pale-skinned face as if she were that daughter from the Addams Family, with a sweeter smile, no braids, and fangs. Right, the fangs. When she grinned at me, her smile revealed pearly whites, but her canines were far more pronounced than any human's ever should be. It was like she was a vampire, and if she told me she was, I would have believed her, gothic Lolita dress, Mary Jane's and all. It was like she was a doll come to life. "Hello there," she greeted. The way she spoke was particular, but her English was incredible, as if centuries old. But I assumed her large teeth made it hard for her to speak in the exact manner that I did. I didn't mind. "My name is Andrew." Before I could say my own name, she stopped me. "I know your name. Your name is Nashi." I gave a nod, and then she smiled wider, as if pleased by her own knowledge. "I'm very excited to meet you. I have wanted to see you for such a long time, but my older brother Akira would not allow me to do so. You are my favorite human, you see." It was a lot to take in, the fact that there was some strange girl in my room who knew my name, referred to me as human, and still hadn't told me how she got in the first place. But I wasn't worried. Andrew looked no older than me, and her tone was full of joy, and I couldn't bring myself to believe that she was there to hurt me. So while she talked, I was quiet. I allowed this playful stranger to say what was on her mind before even thinking of asking questions, and I listened to her carefully. Andrew seemed to appreciate this, but came to a stop after a short moment. "Are you not human?" I asked, watching as Andrew shook her head and allowed strands of black hair to shift around her face. Before I could ask what she was, she looked at me with her big, bright eyes, leaning over in front of me to the point where I thought she might fall. She didn't. "Do you believe in death? And the afterlife?" I could tell Andrew was not threatening me. She was just simply giving me questions. I nodded, and she went on. "Good. Then this will be so much easier to explain to you, my mortal, than I thought it should be." Standing up from my floor, she spread her arms wide open and showed off her dress completely. It was black, with the design of roses around the bottom of the skirt that had white leaves. "The Grim Reaper. Do you know about him?" I nodded. "Then I suppose the simplest answer would be that I am not the Grim Reaper. You humans are so silly saying that there is only one of us, when there are so many of us that come and collect dead or dying souls. Oh, so many think of only he when they refer to us Reapers. My poor brother Akira would be so angry to hear the tale once more from a mortal." I wanted to laugh at the way she spoke like a character from a 19th century novel, and yet I was enthralled by it. The manner of speech gave her character, solidifying what claimed truth she had been telling me. Andrew went on, smiling happily at me. "No, there are many of us, all of us Reapers, and we do not just steal the souls of whomever we want. We are not the devils and demons that mortals have made us out to be. How rude they are." "What can you do then?" I hadn't meant to interrupt her, but my question only seemed to fuel her desire to speak with me. "What can I do?" With her playful tone, Angie wiggled her fingers in excitement. "I can travel through shadows and make weapons out of them. I can pull out a human soul and heal the physical wounds and damage that lay hidden among it. Oh, and I can crystallize the human soul too. I can take good care of it, yes. I can see the glow of human souls to see how healthy they are. I can do such wonderful things with my power to help people and perform the most intimate of magic. People always tell you about how magic isn't real, but when Angie spoke of it, every word rippled in truth. It was like she put her whole being into explaining what she could do. And I listened to every second of it, soaking it up like a sponge while nodding to show I was paying attention. She seemed to appreciate this, with her smile seeming almost blinding as she dropped down to the floor beside me. That was when the conversation dropped and I decided to try and pick it back up. So, I started, watching as she looked at me eagerly. What are you doing here? I assume you have a place you live as a Reaper, right? Andrew nodded, making herself comfortable enough to sit properly while still being ladylike and tending to the skirt of her dress. I caught myself looking away as she adjusted herself, not wanting to seem rude or engage in something scandalous if she moved the wrong way. She must have noticed, as after a moment there was a tap of a pale hand against my own, and when I looked over, she sat perfectly. You humans really do call it as you see it. It is quite adorable, especially to hear from you. I chuckled, and Angie moved her hand to help emphasize her thought. As a Reaper, you must assume that I am from a place called Hell, yes? Because that is simply not true. Reapers are not a man cloaked in black made of bones, carrying a scythe, riding on a black horse into the fair night. No, no, we are a species that lives alongside you carbon-based life forms. The way she separated people from Reapers by referring to them as carbon-based life forms made me sicker for a moment, and I caught the joy in her eyes at seeing me happy to be beside her. It was either that, or she knew that because I had laughed, I had been paying attention, and thusly she became excited. Either way, she went on. The shadows are our home. We press our hands into the blackness of the dark and are brought to a place where we live among our fellow men and women, and then we step towards a light that leads us to your world. Reapers are like neighbors to humans, but we are so similar that people have troubles recognizing us, and we do try to separate ourselves from humans, we really do. See, it is Reaper tradition to wear black when in the human world so that the humans can distinguish us from them. But now, however, the humans also wear black. It makes things ever so confusing, dear Nashi. Scanning Andrew up and down, I took in her appearance carefully. It was true. She was dressed in black clothing with only accents of other colors. Meanwhile, I was dressed in a long purple scarf, white button-up, long brown pants with black shoes. The color difference seemed even more apparent in the dimly lit room, of which the only source of light was the amber glow of a lamp that I assumed Angie turned on while she was waiting for me. Before she could speak, I cut her off with a chuckle. You still haven't answered my first question, you know? It took a while for my statement to register within her mind, proven by the fact that she stepped away from my side to look for the rabbit who had previously rushed away under my bed. Almost as if she had never seen a pet bunny before, she was enthralled by the way it hopped around in quick attempts at escaping her grabbing hands. Soon, she caught the animal and cooed at it until it stopped wriggling in her grasp, and only then did she realize what I had told her. There was a moment of her pausing before she gasped and placed her hands over her mouth as if she'd said something she shouldn't have, while scampers dove to the floor and towards its source of food. I only laughed in response, pushing my glasses up before they slipped off my nose completely while she was caught in a moment of remembrance. As she caught her words, I pulled my phone out from my pocket and turned on some music that seemed to help her calm down a little, considering how patient she acted after listening to the first few seconds of a peaceful melody. Well? Taking my hand, Andrew studied my face, and I did the same to her. I came to see you, of course. I pointed to myself with my free hand, and she nodded. Yes, you! I told you you are my favorite human, so I come to see you. Well, why am I your favorite? I asked, watching as she used her own free hand to play with the end of her dress. I'm sure there are plenty of other humans out there who would be willing to meet someone like you, someone from, well, not really beyond our world, but rather someone who lives alongside it, with the powers you have and all. Andrew simply smiled, leaning over to poke my nose as if the answer were obvious, and I was just being too silly to notice what was right in front of me. You are very special, don't you know? She moved closer, looking me in my eyes to the point where I began to feel nervous by her presence. After all, you know your own life story. You used to be blind. Despite the surprise I wanted to show, I knew that she was right. At one point, I was in fact blind and needed the help of my older brother and sister to guide me around. That change had happened about a year ago, possibly to this day. I had dreamed of seeing a place full of color and vibrancy, of life and excitement that I had never seen before. And then when I awoke, my eyes worked. Well, they didn't work perfectly, considering everything in my room was a mess of blurs, blobs, and colors I couldn't identify. I was taken to the optometrist that afternoon to get a pair of glasses, and from then on my family calls it a miracle. But when she mentioned my previous inability to see, I could see how the event played by in a manner that made sense. With what Angie told me, Reapers possessed the ability to heal the physical wounds of the soul, which seemed like miracle enough for me to have my sight restored after years of not having it. I knew that she could just feel the reminiscence rippling off my skin as I remembered seeing nothing but darkness, but before I made a noise, she spoke up. "I was the one who healed your eyes," Angie proclaimed, wiggling in place. "You were my first attempt at healing a wounded soul, so I was very bad at using my magic then, so you have my apologies. I did whatever I could to heal the wound completely, but that was as close as I could get. If I could heal it now, I would, but your soul has healed over the rest of the wound by now because it's been so long." "You fixed my eyesight?" I asked, watching as she settled herself and nodded. If that wasn't enough to convince me that she possessed magical power and was not quite human, I'm not sure what would have been. Thankfully for her, I was fully convinced of her abilities and no longer held any concern or confusion as to who the girl was who sat in my room beside me. The kindness in her heart was enough to have brought my vision back to me, and for that I could never thank her enough. She was more of a guardian angel to me than a harbinger of the souls of the innocent. Angie went on, speaking in a tone that was slightly sadder. "I watched over you from the shadows, making sure nothing would happen to you on your way to school, yes? That fate would not bring harm to you. But as time progressed, I noticed people who began to look at you in the manner I looked at you. Gentle smiles, the sort of haze in their eyes. Oh, it made me so upset and worried. My brother Akira always said that life simply had to be that way, because of the standing humans and reapers have had for so very long now, but I could not be happy with an answer like that. So instead of letting anyone take you away, I decided to take you first." Her last statement threw me off guard and caused me to glance back at her with a slightly startled expression. "Take me away," she had said, as if I were going to be kidnapped or stolen from her. "What do you mean?" Fiddling with the ends of her hair in one hand, Angie gave me the explanation I asked for. "Well, humans were getting crushes on you. You couldn't tell, but I could. And I thought to myself, that's not fair. I've been beside him all this time. Why do they get to be in love with him? And oh, it made me so very upset. I wouldn't let them take your heart, so I decided to arrive to you and tell you how I feel before any of them could." It was a slightly shocking declaration, to say the least. Having a girl show up in my house, tell me she's from part of another world, introduce magic to me, and then say that she had been in love with me was quite the situation to be put into. There were points where I didn't know how to feel about it all. In fact, there were multiple points that directed me to telling her that she shouldn't be in love with me due to the nature of her being some sort of creature while I was 100% human. And yet I still accepted her confession. She came all this way, watched over me, and even gathered up her courage to tell me that she liked me. So I didn't say, "Yes, I will go out with you." I said, "Then let's get to know each other." And her eyes lit. In her vision, it was an okay. But I know that before you date anyone, or even start on a romantically inclined relationship, you should know them, their likes, dislikes, and everything about them that they're willing to tell you. So I couldn't just accept her into a loving relationship just yet. But that's not to say that decision didn't change after long nights out, late night movies, and a lot of good morning breakfast with her kind and loving smile. Thank you.
That seems high enough. Right there. Okay. Hi. I'm going to be reading a short story, fictional piece I wrote called Walled Out. Walled Out. 11 at night, Ida sat in her easy chair in the living room. The door was locked 9 ways, and the windows were all shut. Curtains drawn, no port of entry left unsealed. Just wait until Beth tried to come back, sneak in through her bedroom window the same way she'd gotten out. She'd be hurt, maybe, when she found out what Ida had done. Perhaps she'd leave again, or, like the first day she got there, the day of Pearl's funeral, perhaps Beth would set up camp on the front porch and refuse to come inside. The whole incident had turned the neighborhood against Beth. They agreed with Ida that she was ungrateful for her grandmother's generosity and that she didn't understand or take into consideration how Pearl's death had ripped a daughter from Ida just as much as it had taken a mother from Beth. But that didn't mean that they helped Ida pass that night. No, when it came to that insolent teenager, Ida was on her own. Once Beth got off the porch, she locked herself in her room and refused to come out except for meals. Every word Ida spoke to her was met with silence, maybe a grunt or two, and one time a phrase, the only words Beth had spoken to Ida in the 2 months since she'd moved in. They'd been doing dishes, Ida washing and Beth drying. Ida talked to herself to pass the time. She would have played music, but her radio had given out a long time ago, and talking was all there was. You know, Pearl used to hate doing the dishes. Hated every chore, really. I had to pick up all her slack, but I was the same way with my mother, only it was less tolerated back then. Did Pearl make you do the dishes with her? Beth didn't make eye contact. The next plate she was handed, she dropped, leaving a puddle of ceramic shards and soap suds on the floor. Now, what right? Ida started. She searched her mind for the right words in the right order, not letting her anger get the best of her. Beth put down her rag and turned to leave the kitchen. I just have no idea why you treat me this way, Ida said. And Beth said 5 words in response, ending her mute streak. You know what you did. She left Ida to sweep up the mess and to figure everything out. What did I do? Ida said it to no one, to herself. What had she done? She took a survey of her sins that night and every night leading up to this great lockout, mixing fabrics, taking the Lord's name in vain, cursing, lying, coveting, all the things she felt guilty about, and not one that Beth hadn't done, and then some. The girl couldn't be mad at her for any of those trifles. There had to be something bigger. Even now, in her easy chair 2 months gone by, what did I do? Ida knew nothing. Midnight, there was a knock on the door. Through the peephole, Ida saw Jean, her closest friend and nosiest neighbor. Rain poured around her and filled their street. Ida could hear it cleaning the town, her house, Jean, Beth, and whoever else remained outside. Jean shook her head and droplets flew from her corkscrew curls, one perfectly obscuring the peephole. With a huff, Ida opened to the door. Why are you here? She asked. I thought you might want some company. Ida crossed her arms. I'm fine on my own, and with this weather, Beth will be back. I don't know, Jean said. I think the weather might slow her down. It didn't stop you. Well, Jean, seeing there would be no way in tonight, took a few steps off the porch. She pulled the hood of her yellow rain jacket over her head. But when she does come home, you give me a call, all right? All right, Ida said. She shut the door before Jean could say anything else, and she redid all of the locks. What did I do? Ida had asked Jean a week after Beth moved in. They were at Jean's house. Ida claimed that Beth didn't want Jean over too full of grief to deal with the company. Really, the child floated around like nothing was wrong, blaring music, ignoring chores, and mocking the older woman with little gasps and eye rolls at everything she said. I have no idea, Jean replied. And then she said perhaps the truest thing Ida had heard in a while. It's probably just a bluff. Ida nodded. A bluff explained it all. Beth, shaken by her mother's passing, confused by the stranger she was now living with, naturally put up her defenses. She was afraid to give Ida a chance. That would make all that had happened too real for her, so she walled her grandmother out. This revelation did not heal all ills between Ida and Beth or stop Ida from running through her checklist of bad deeds, but she started to give Beth more leeway. If the girl had made up her mind not to like Ida, what could Ida do? Every kind gesture, such as waking up early to make breakfast, abandoning the attempts to make Beth clean up and buying her new clothes, even letting her look through Pearl's old things, It all went unthanked, unnoticed, and then Beth started sneaking out, abandoning the woman that had taken her in for some hoodlums, street rats, the common filth. Even in the world's worst weather, Beth went. Ida found her empty bed at 9 o'clock, and she bolted the door shortly after. Now, 2 in the morning, still no sign. Beth had always been back before 1 in the past. First time for everything, thought Ida. She went to her front door, and Jean knocked again. She could see through the peephole again, no one there. She unlocked 6 of the locks, but she left 3 locked, and then, unable to fight her feet moving down the hall, she unlocked Beth's window. Beth's room was messy. Clothes covered half the floor, food wrappers the other half. Ida stepped over the junk to leave and caught sight of a book peeking out of the top drawer of Beth's dresser. Pink cover, frilly. She picked it up and discovered it was a diary. In her hands it weighed more than she expected. She flipped through it fast, barely looking. A few random names, curse words, and finally the latest entry. You burned her. You? Who kept their diary in second person? Oh wait, it was coming together. Beth had left out the diary so Ida would find it. She wanted her to know, and she did. And now she knew. 3 in the morning, no sign of Beth. Ida knew this day was going to be bad from the start. She could tell by the devious creases in Beth's face over breakfast. Her refusal of sugar in her cereal, didn't want to be indebted to Ida. Not that Ida would ever do that to her, ask things from her or anyone on God's green earth. She gave, she didn't receive. She had been blessed with the ability to survive on what was left with from her husband's death and a monthly check from Social Security adjusted for inflation. Beth, how was Beth surviving outside? Ida undid all the locks on the front door. She wasn't stupid enough to leave it open, though the thought occurred to her. That would make the house cold, and then when Beth did come back, she would complain about the chill and ridicule Ida for being worried as if caring was a first-degree crime. Ida cared about people sometimes, not much about things because they were fleeting. She cared a lot about, her reputation, certainly, or she wouldn't have gotten so worked up over Beth's harmful allegations, but having read the diary, those fears could be put to rest. Ida knew she had never burned Pearl. Except, that was an accident. Knock on the door. Jean? No, it was Beth, at last. Mascara running and lipstick mostly gone, clothes drenched and dripping as she pushed open the door with ease. Why is it unlocked? She asked. Ida fumbled a lie about how she was just about to go outside and look for Beth. Right, Beth said. She moved slowly to her bedroom, face bleached white by some kind of sickness induced. She'd done it to herself. Ida's sympathy hesitated to increase beyond 0. She followed Beth to her room and sat at the foot of the bed, gesturing for Beth to do the same. Tell me what I did, she said. Beth glanced from Ida to her dresser and saw the diary in the same place. You know, she said. Ida was about to repeat what she always did, that she didn't, in fact, know what she did to offend Beth so. But she wanted the girl to tell her, get into specifics, echo whatever lies Pearl had filled her with before passing. But then she saw water forming in Beth's eyes, her tired brows pulled down in an involuntary way, her face contorting into the saddest frown that one could imagine. And Ida thought, maybe by responding I turn her defensive, and that overrides all else. Real communication comes to a halt. Beth had a one-track mind that way. Ida's granddaughter, just like Pearl, just like Ida, for Ida had let no other thoughts enter her mind since Beth had accused her. She needed an answer. So she sat in silence, waiting for Beth to spill, and finally, amidst the tears, Beth opened her mouth and confessed. A quiet, whimpery confession, but nonetheless accusatory. You wouldn't let Mom go to a concert, she said, and then you were curling her hair for church, and you pressed the iron to her skin to burn her. No, Ida said, I didn't burn your mother. My memories are all golden with her. Maybe I called her a name or two, but no burning. But you did it, Beth said. Mom told me all about it. She said you would fight for days. She was lying. Ida said. It was easy. Ida was free. Nothing weighed her down. She knew she was telling the truth. Her face glowed with righteousness. Of course you'd say that, Beth muttered at last. But her faith was shaken, and she was shaking, cold, crying, confused. Ida was not confused. She put the pieces of the puzzle together. Pearl, parented by lying about her not at all rough upbringing, perhaps to justify the poor upbringing she delivered. She probably thought she could get away with those lies forever, if forever ended with Ida's death. Ida went to the linen closet and grabbed Beth a blanket, wrapping it around the trembling creature. And, you know, if I had done anything, she said, that Jean would have had the whole state talking about it. Beth didn't respond. She pulled the blanket over her head. So she doesn't want to see me, thought Ida. That's all right. In the bathroom, Ida washed her hands, brushed her teeth, examined her face in the mirror. All these wrinkles. She was too scared of Botox to get any work done. Surgery was cheating time anyway, and Ida cheated no man or woman or construct. Science, religion, psychology, it all told her that the right thing to do brought you the most reward in the end, the main thing being a clear conscience. Because normally when Ida looked in the mirror, she saw no inner ugliness, only the crumbling outside, and that was all right, because she didn't see that in the dark when she slept. She only felt, and she felt fine, bright and clean, her mind sponged of bad things where the body couldn't be fixed. But in the mirror this time, she saw twice the ugliness on the outside and all the ugliness on the inside. She saw herself as Pearl saw her in the mirror. Ida was wretched. She tried to reach up her sleeve and wipe away the apparition, scrubbing her reflection back to the way that she knew she really was. No luck. All she did was smudge good glass. Around her lips appeared a blurry red lining. No, around Pearl's lips, her ghost in the mirror letting Ida see her disapproval. But here Ida was taking care of Beth, wasn't she? And doing a good job, too. Pearl couldn't see that, couldn't see anything, or she'd know her mother forgave her for her lies. She would know. Ida reached forward to give Pearl a hug. Maybe then things would repair between them. But the mirror was cold and she pulled away. There always was a wall between them, still was, even in death. You'd think ghosts would be able to transcend those things, mirrors and walls and emotional boundaries, but I'd guess ghosts aren't nearly as capable as we think, and we give them way too much credit. Beth cried out in the other room. Ida had to help. Who else could? Not Ghost Pearl. Pearl was incapable. Pearl remembered the day of the concert differently from Ida, which meant she remembered it wrong. There Ida was trying to do something nice for Pearl by curling her hair when the iron slipped from her hand and hit Pearl's upper right arm. That accident was abuse? Yes, they had been fighting, and yes, Ida had never dropped the iron before, and yes, she remarked afterwards that she was glad it happened. Yeah, that was all true, but it was just Pearl getting what she deserved. Karmic justice, that was how Ida remembered it, anyhow. Ida made the rounds to shut up the house. The front door locked 9 ways, all the windows bolted, curtains drawn. Beth said, "I love you," in a weird way, which was, "I'm hungry. Make me some food." Ida said about making her some soup. What had Ida done? Accidentally? On purpose? What had she done to Pearl? Was it bad enough to merit this isolation, this secondhand hatred from her granddaughter? Pearl had carried the burn mark on her upper arm all her life. She covered it with makeup. At the wake, plenty of people had seen it, and no one had thought anything of it but Beth, brooding and concentrating her ill will towards her new guardian. Other people didn't need to think anything of it. They hadn't been there. They'd done nothing. It was only Ida who hurt Pearl, only Ida who straddled the border between sin and cosmic justice, accident and intentional hurt. The kitchen blurred in front of her until she could only make out one object, the pot boiling water for soup. Ida rolled up the sleeve of her nightgown and pressed her arm against the pot's side. She shut her eyes and concentrated, trying to feel what her daughter had felt. Then the pain reached unbearable, and she pulled her arm away. It still hurt. Ida threw in ingredients, and she stirred the soup so it wouldn't boil over. It still hurt. Beth waited for dinner, or was it breakfast? The sun still hid below the horizon, and it still hurt. It still hurt, and when would it stop? And was the answer never? And could Pearl, in the mirror underground, wherever, still feel her arm tingle with some sort of pain? Ida pulled the soup from the stove and poured it into 3 bowls, and it still hurt. It was a message to Pearl, the 3rd bowl. The front door is locked, but other doors are open. They've just opened. And when you figure out how, you can come inside. Thank you.